All right, again, I'd like to welcome everybody to this regular meeting of the San Benito County Board of Supervisors, November 8th, 2016. At this time, I'll turn over to our County Counsel so he can report out a closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Board of Supervisors met in closed session today to discuss agenda items number 1 through 5 on today's agenda. The Board was able to finish discussions on agenda items number 3, 4, and 5. Agenda items number 1 and 2 will be discussed in their entirety this afternoon and will be reported out at that time. In regards to agenda item number 3, the Board met and conferred in closed session with its real property negotiators regarding property located in Hollister, California, with parcel numbers 020-170-043, 059-020-003, and 059-020-001. The agency negotiators were Adam Goldstone, Capital Program Manager, Brent Barnes, Resource Management Agency Director, Ray Espinoza, CAO, Joe Paul Gonzalez, Clerk Recorder Auditor, Matthew Granger, County Counsel, Barbara J. Thompson, Assistant County Counsel, and Shirley L. Murphy, Deputy County Counsel. The negotiating party was John Perala, Superintendent of San Benito High School District. Under negotiation were the price and terms of payment for the property listed above. Authority to meet can be found in California Government Code Section 54956.8. At this time, the Board took no reportable action. In regards to agenda item number 4, the Board met and conferred in closed session with its legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and the significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivision D2 and E5 of Government Code Section 54956.9 in one case. The facts and circumstances justifying this closed session are statements made regarding potential litigation if the county proceeded forward with the purchase of property located at 1161 San Felipe Home for a new homeless shelter. At this time, the Board took no reportable action. And finally, in regards to agenda item number 5, the Board met and conferred in closed session with its legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation and the significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivision D2 and E2 of Government Code Section 54956.9 in one case. The facts and circumstances justifying this closed session were the potential of additional litigation regarding the master tax sharing agreement currently being litigated in Award Homes, Inc. versus the County of San Benito et al. Under case number CU-15-00099 and BMC Promiseway LLC DBA Benchmark Communities versus County of San Benito et al. Filed in the Superior Court of California in the County of San Benito under case number CU-15-0056. And the Board took no reportable action on this agenda item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counsel. So at this time, moving on to the agenda, item C, presentations and recognitions. Looks like we don't have any this morning. Moving on to item D, which is our public comment. This is opportunity for any member of the public to address this Board on items of interest not appearing on the agenda. No action may be taken unless it is provided by Government Code Section 54954.2. Madam Clerk.
Yes, Margie Richmond.
Morning, Rich from Hollister. Good morning on Election Day.
Morning.
As you know, my latest crusade is to try and get a commitment from the Board and also the City of Hollister to do something about the library. I have written and I gave to the Intergovernmental Committee a proposed resolution that is very simple, saying we are going to do something to improve the library. It doesn't put a date on it. It doesn't put a dollar amount on it. It doesn't put strap you up to building a new building versus renovating an old building. It just says we're going to do something to modernize the library. And so I think that's a simple step you can take to vote on a resolution such as that. It gives the justification in there that will set the tone for us to start to move ahead to at least look at our options officially until we get a decision to say we are going to do something. And I know many of you are going to say, "Well, let's wait for the needs assessment." I think that's the situation at the library, as far as the physical facility is concerned, speaks for itself. I don't think any needs assessment it may tell you how big a new library has to be. It may tell you whether you should renovate or build a new building. It may tell you a lot of things. But it's certainly not going to say we believe that this is going to be adequate. I mean, the thing is 50 years old, okay? And it's one of the smallest libraries per capita around, and I understand we're moving on to the digital age. I'm perfectly familiar with that. But, you know, we're also not getting a lot of borrowing out of our library, and I don't think our people here in this county are any less well-educated, and I don't think they're any less curious about the world than anybody else. I just think the building is very old, and it's overcrowded, and it's not inviting, and people don't go where it's old, overcrowded, and not inviting unless they're visiting my house. Okay? So I think you ought to make a commitment to do something, and I've given you basically 100 bailout positions, so you don't have to say we don't want this because it says that the tile in the bathroom is going to be green and we don't want green tile. We just want to get you on the record as saying we're going to do something, and what that something may depend on how we fund it. It may depend on who funds it. It may depend on 1,000 things. But until we say we're going to do something, we don't even have a pot for somebody to put a check in if they want to. We don't have a building fund. I want to see a building fund at the government agency, because having it here, I know you control your dollars well, and that we have auditors and we have rules on who can sign checks and things. So I don't have to worry about that. Thank you for your time.
I have no other speaker cards.
Okay. Any other speakers wishing to provide comments to the board regarding items not appearing on the agenda? See none. We will move on. Item E, department head announcements. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we do have a few announcements. We have one out of our probation department. We have our chief probation officer, Ted Baran, here to give your board an update.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I have two quick announcements and one hopefully moderate one. Just want to let you know that our very own Joseph Frontella, our superintendent of juvenile hall, has been elected as the president of his association. That's the California Association Probation Institutions Administrators. Another recognition of the leadership we have here in San Benito. He will be working across the state with all the probation departments regarding their institutions, facilities, juvenile halls, and camps. So congratulations to Joe. Very proud of him, and very proud of him representing San Benito County in this regard. Additionally, yesterday, the chief probation officers of California are actually broken up into 5 regions. And at yesterday's regional meeting, I was elected as the chair of the Bay region, representing 11 counties in the Bay Area. That would be Alameda, San Francisco, Marin, Contra Costa, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, Solano, Sonoma, and Napa, and San Benito. So I am now the Bay region chair. We're representing the Bay region at all the CPOC chief probation officers meetings. And my final kind of update and announcement, a couple of months ago, on September 28th, I was lucky enough to join 100 law enforcement executives from across the nation at the White House for a briefing on 21st century policing. This is kind of an adjunct to the, or follow-up to the May 2015 report from the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. That task force actually came up with 6 pillars, which was building trust and legitimacy in law enforcement, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing and crime reduction, training and education, and officer safety and wellness. The invitations actually started going out for these events in July of 2016 to law enforcement executives across the nation. And it was interesting being there because I was sitting next to a chief of police from Texas and a sheriff from Virginia in the meeting. So the invitations primarily went out to chiefs, sheriffs, captains, commanders that had reputations for innovation in their fields. We received presentations from the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, the Department of Justice, COPS Office, and we had separate breakout sessions for discussion regarding police data initiatives, use of social media, officer safety and wellness, and implicit bias training, and storytelling using social media as well. I was really, really honored to represent not only San Benito County, but there were only 2 chief probation officers of which I'm aware to have attended this briefing. So to represent not only our county and our perspective, but also my industry as well. I thank the board for the support that we gained from allowing me to go, and look forward to working to implement some of this stuff down here. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I want to congratulate you because it's not very often that we have representatives from San Benito County representing us, not at the state level and now nationally. So congratulations to you. Congratulations to Joe. We're very proud of what you've done and how you've put us on the map.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We also have another announcement out of our Human Resources Department. We have Georgia Cochran, our interim director, here to give you an announcement, your board, and the public.
Good morning. Just very briefly, I want to give you a recap, an overview of our open enrollment, which closed on October 21st. And last week was spent catching up, last details, tracking down a few people. So we're nearly closed. We have just a handful of people where we're having to do some very special outreach, taking a few twists and turns we didn't anticipate. We will be back to you as an update on November 22nd with kind of some details in terms of the enrollment in the plans with respect to that, because we did have that new high deductible health plan. So we want to kind of tell you where everyone landed, and we'll give you those details on the 22nd. And then we will also be sending a note to department heads as well as all employees, letting them know that if they have deductions for their health insurance, that those will show up and be reflected in the paycheck of December 9th.
Any questions, members of the board? Thank you, George.
Yeah, thank you, Georgia, and also thanks to the team. There's a lot of work there. We also have another announcement out of our OES EMS office. We have Kevin Neal here to give your board an update.
Good morning. I just wanted to give you a invitation to an emergency exercise we're holding on November 17th at Premier Cinemas. This exercise will provide first responders with an opportunity to evaluate capabilities, plans, policies, and procedures in a training setting. It will focus on decision-making, coordination, and integration of multiple agencies during a multi-casualty incident. So I wanted to extend an invitation to all of you to come and observe. Like I said, it's November 17th at Premier Cinemas on McCrae Street, and it'll start about 10 a.m. I also gave Deputy Clerk of the Board an invitation that she, I believe, will pass around, or if you don't have it already, that has a little more details, date, address, etc. So hope to see you there.
We also have another one out of our Health and Human Services Department. We have Jim Riding Sword, our Director of Health and Human Services. He's going to give you an update on the CDBG grant.
Good morning. As you may recall, 2014, we obtained a CDBG grant in the amount of $1.5 million. The major purpose of that was to acquire and purchase a community services center to serve low-income and homeless populations. We then put in an application for 2016, and a week ago Friday, on October the 26th, we got a notice that we have been approved for a second grant for phase 2 of these operations of $2 million. We received everything that we asked for. We have about $1.4 million in here for, finishing out phase 2. We have money in here for operations once we open up. There's money in here for community programs such as battered and abused spouses, and some money in here for youth services. There was $28 million dispersed at the state level. San Benito County got $2 million. I want to thank the staff who worked on this. I mean, it's amazing the amount of work that goes into a grant like this. You just don't see it because it's all behind the scenes. There's deadlines. There's lots of things that have to be done, letters of support. And so if you see Enrique and his staff around, shake their hands and thank them on behalf of the county. So that's our announcement for today.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your leadership in your department in getting this grant. I know there's a lot of frustration in the community. We see a lot of people in need, homeless, youth services, and adult services, and it's through efforts like this that we're able to address that. We all have to work together and with other agencies to, help people, and thank you very much. This is a big deal, and now we could go to work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Barrios.
Jim, I want to thank you as well and your staff. I'm very fortunate to have been a part of this from the beginning. And we all worry about how we're going to get the funding for future planning of our homeless service center. And because I think we did such a good job with the initial monies that we received, we had a plan, we moved on it, we spent the money as we should have. This opened up a lot of doors, and this is only the beginning. So I believe that that's because of your staff and your leadership. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim and staff. Appreciate that. The last item on our, for us, Mr. Chair, is we'd like to go ahead and pull item number 10 from consent to be heard November 22nd, and that'll be presented to us by our county counsel's office.
Sounds good. Thank you for that.
That's it.
Okay, moving on. Item F, board announcements. Starts to my left. Supervisor Barrios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of announcements. I want to report out that Supervisor Rivas and I had the town hall meeting for our LGBTQ community. We discussed a resolution, a draft resolution that we had put out. It was very well attended. We had people from the city, the community. Very proud to say that there were a lot of high school students as well. Mm-hmm. They had wonderful input. They pointed out wording that we had in that resolution that really needed to be a little different, and we agreed. So they're going to do more homework on that. They're going to bring it back to us, and I believe we will have another meeting. So it was really quite successful.
Right.
So
and it's possible that the other meeting could be a cooperative meeting with the City of Hollister and a couple of representatives.
That is correct. So, and then the last thing is that I really want to take Marty's recommendation for the resolution for the library. We don't have to be specific, but we verbalized our support for the library. We've done a lot of things along the way that says we are committed to doing something. Let's put it in writing. A simple resolution. I have not seen the sample that he has brought forward, but intergovernmental. If you could bring it back to the board, I would really like to agendize a resolution that puts that in writing. So, thank you.
Supervisor Barrios. Supervisor De La Cruz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First thing is, last night Supervisor Munzer and myself attended the Vets Commission meeting. We talked at length about youth activity and the needs for more parks in our community. And we're going to continue to have those discussions as we're moving forward. I also attended the Hazel Hawkins annual fundraising event, and this year's event was in honor of the Barragon family donating about over $500,000 for a new diabetic center that the community needs real bad, and hopefully in the near future someone from the public can donate to build a new dialysis center because there are more and more people who are needing dialysis. Other than that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thanks, Supervisor. Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended the intergovernment meeting, and I want to mention that Mr. Richmond did come before us and presented his resolution. And the way he presented it was there was one where it was a county-only resolution, and then he also did a joint city and county resolution. So it may have to go back to the intergovernment, see if we want to do a joint with the city or what, but at some point we definitely will come back with that resolution before this board. Also, The committee has been working on some bylaws and change in memberships. I think we're still tweaking the bylaws, but the big change is we have established two, I think, de facto members, I think that's the word we're using, in which the Hollister School District and San Benito Joint Union High School will have non-voting memberships on the committee once all this is ironed out. So those are kind of the two big changes.
Cool.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Joe. Supervisor Botelho.
Yes, I want to support Supervisor Munzer in going back to the Intergovernmental Committee to figure out which resolution we would like to bring back to this board. We've made some really good progress, I think, in the last year with the library. The adoption of the impact fees, both by the city and the county, huge. And the library assessment needs study that's in progress right now. But I don't think it's a bad idea to adopt a resolution as far as this board's commitment going forward with improving the library services in San Benito County. I do want to wish everyone to take time, thank our veterans this week that have served our country and have given tremendous sacrifices, and thank those that are in service of our country, the men and women in our armed forces this week, and for that matter, all the time. This is important recognition for the freedoms that we have. So I hope everybody takes the time to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Supervisor Botelho. I as well want to remind everyone that this Friday is Veterans Day, so we certainly want to honor and thank all of our veterans in this country, and in particular, our local veterans. This Friday, there's going to be a Veterans Day breakfast at San Benito High School in the school cafeteria, which is at 1220 Monterey Street. It's a wonderful event that's hosted by LULAC, our local LULAC chapter. It's this Friday from, I believe, 7 to about noon. The doors are open, but the program for the event begins at 8 o'clock. It'll run from 8 to 9 a.m. So the cost of the event is $8. So I encourage everyone to attend and support our local veterans. Several local veterans will be honored. It's always a great event. And so with that, we will move on to our consent agenda. Are there any items on consent that wish to be pulled? I'm going to go ahead and pull item 14 and move it to the to be heard at the conclusion of consent as our first regular agenda item, which is, again, item 14, having to do with the Nash Road closure. Are there any items that any member of the board wish to pull? Any items from the public? It's 14. Okay, we'll move that to the items. Okay, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda with the exception of item 14, which has been pulled, item 10, which has been pulled, which will be heard on November 22nd.
Excuse me, Chair. 17, they also want to pull.
17. Is it a member from the public?
Yes.
Okay, so at this time, we will pull 17 for the remainder of consent. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
A motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. At this time, we will move to item 17, which has been pulled or requested to be pulled by a member of the public.
He just informed me that the 17 should be 14.
Okay.
17 is not.
Okay.
Motion to approve 17.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So moving on to our first public, to our regular agenda, we'll go with item 14, which is out of the Resource Management Agency. Mr. Barnes? Oh. Morning, Adam.
Good morning, Chairman and Board. What you have before you today is the interagency agreement with the City of Hollister, San Benito High School District regarding the closure of Nash Road and the construction of a River Parkway and Regional Park. Last Tuesday night, the high school board voted unanimously to approve the same agreement, and then last night, the City Council did the same. So it is before you now as the final act of approving, and here for any questions you have on the agreement.
Okay. Supervisor Botelho?
You want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First off, I want to thank you, Adam, for all the work you've done on this project. There for a while, we were at a bit of a standstill as far as our negotiations and work with the high school district and the city of Hollister, trying to put together this really important project. And I want to explain to the public that it's somewhat complex in the fact that it's solve a number of issues and address the safety of our students, which is, I think, is paramount. This has been an issue for the high school for a long time. The City Council of Hollister was very much aware of this problem, as well as the Board of Supervisors, and all three agencies had worked hard to come to some sort of resolution. Included in it is, parking needs, and recreation needs, both for the high school, San Benito High School District, as well as the city of Hollister and San Benito County overall. This is really, I believe, a real exciting project. It's a long-term project, but immediately with this agreement, we have the opportunity to address a safety issue, and hopefully nobody is a victim of us taking the time to get to this point. But our staff worked really hard. The high school staff worked really hard on it. And I want to, there's a couple here that I want to thank. I want to thank Superintendent Perales for kind of cracking the whip. And, I understood his frustration. I see Councilman Clower, who was instrumental on our committee as well here. And there was frustration that it took us a little time to get here. But, we were working on a number of issues in the county. But once we got going, we had a good committee. Staff was dedicated, and this agreement is going to be great for the long-term future of San Benito County. That's what I have. I don't know if Supervisor Barrios has more to add.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well said, Supervisor Botelho. I want to thank the City of Hollister. I want to thank San Benito High School District. I want to thank Supervisor Botelho for being part of the committee, our staff. But I particularly want to thank Councilman Clower, who is a real champion in moving forward, because the issues initially really were city-centered. And he brought to the table a different outlook and ideas, and I really appreciated that. Superintendent Perales, you were very passionate about this. You made it known, and we appreciate it. That's what it takes to get things like this done. And the other people that I want to thank is the attorneys from all the three agencies. This was not sitting down and battling to see who was right and who was wrong. It was really about trying to figure out what is best for each agency involved, and you did an excellent job of doing exactly that. At the end of the day, all agencies were protected, but the best thing that came about is that our children are protected. So that is a real plus, and we all end up, everybody uses win-win. You know what? We can use it over and over again because it applies. So history in the making here. When you get three agencies to agree on so much, I think that it's absolutely phenomenal. So thank you to everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Barrios. Okay. Any other questions, members of the board?
Mr. Chair, my comments is this is a perfect example of cooperation between multi-agencies in which the end result is a beneficial to our community, especially to our students at the high school, and the ability to address other issues at the same time. So I want to make sure that is addressed to the community, and it's very important. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thanks, Supervisor. Supervisor Munzer, anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have supported this regional park ever since I've been on the Board of Supervisors, so I'm very glad that we're moving forward with this agreement.
Thank you. Yeah, and I as well. This is something that our board, we started the discussions in 2011, 2012, and this is something where we had our own internal our disagreements, which we worked through. So about a year and a half ago, we thought we had it in the bag. We, spent 5 minutes on the item. We all approved it 5-0, and then the city came around and denied it. And so, but this is really, I couldn't have said it, as good as my colleague here, Ms. Barrios. She's absolutely right. We did our homework. We took our defeat and we went back to the table. We worked with the city, so I certainly want to thank the council members, Mr. Clower. And it's really, we went a year ago from it being, a 3-2 vote to not move forward to a 5-0 vote last night. So I certainly want to thank the city council because this is what we need to do moving forward. Because this is not about our county, what's best for the county, what's best for the city, what's best for our entire county and our community moving forward, obviously. And so, but this is always this issue, regardless of a park, regardless of a road closing, it's always been for in my opinion, for the five of us, about safety, about about this road that runs, ironically, right through my supervisorial district, where it's only a matter of time. Before we do have an issue with a student that is struck or a staff member at the high school that is struck by a vehicle. And so this has always been, for us, about safety. But on top of this, we will address safety, but at the same time, we could get something for our community going, such as a regional park, which is a huge accomplishment for our entire county. So thank you, Adam.
Thank you very much.
So with that, I think we'll, do we have some comment cards?
We do. First speaker is John Perales.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Just want to take a minute to praise you and thank you publicly for your support of this interagency agreement. I especially want to recognize again Supervisor Barrios for her involvement, Mr. Botelho from day one being there and being supportive. I know in the audience we have Council Member Clower, absolutely instrumental to this process has been Mr. Adam Goldstone. Just so glad you came back because we were kind of lost out there in the seas without him and his guidance. But Mr. Chair, I just want to convey how excited I am. And again, I couldn't say it as well as Supervisor Barrios. It's about coming together. It's about working together. It's about doing what's best for our community. And in essence, not keeping score, not saying, the district is getting this, the county is getting this, the city is getting this. It's a matter of working together in harmony for what's best for our community. And I have really high hopes for this project with the bypass road, with the River Park project, and going to be positive tonight with the new bond going through and us being able to build and work together on an aquatic center for our community. It is time. It is desperately needed. Already we've had 2 classes go by that have not learned, or many students have not learned how to swim. And to me, that's something that I'm very passionate about and that is a life skill that we must teach. So with that, I just want to humbly thank you and praise you for the cooperation and for the work. And again, Mr. Chair, thank you for the time. And I'm just so happy to be here this morning and to be a part of this. So thank you.
Next speaker is Juan Robledo.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here before you. Thank you, first of all, for hopefully what you're about to do, approve this. I'm sure we will, because I saw you at the City Council last night, and I feel like the county has been behind this for quite a while. I want to thank Carson Clower, too, if he's still here. I think he's already left. But I'll tell you, it took a little while, but I'm very happy with what's happened. 3 agencies getting together and cooperating on something that's this important. last night I was going through my picture files looking for something to post to say thank you to the City Council, and I came across about 10 pictures that deal with Nash Road. One of them had this big, giant tractor when they were putting in the pavement, and it looked like it was going to run over our students. And I thought, man, this is what we're talking about, someday closing this off. And then there was another one where I just got the back of the heads of these kids as they're going past Nash Road, and they're on the side of O'Donnell Gym. And all I could think of is they made it safely across. Almost like like ducks going across. You say, they made it across. And it's nice that thousands make it across safely, thousands. And all it would take is one to do something to our community. Being proactive is the way to go, and I really want to congratulate the city, the county, and our district for what they've done today. I think, if anything, we've learned a lot about government in the last 2 evenings. Our students got a very good eyeful of cooperation, and I thank you for that. So on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the students from 70, I got here in 75, all those 38 years, we want to thank you for doing this historical thing for us. Thank you.
Evelyn Murrow.
Thank you, Chairman and Supervisors. I started at San Benito in 1980, and my classroom was right over by Vesey House, if you remember, in the portables over there. So since 1980, when there wasn't a lot on the south side of campus, we still had a problem with crossing. And now we have so many more students, and as an administrator there and everything, you've seen it grow and grow. I don't want to repeat anything. I've been on the board 12 years, and I could not be more thrilled. I think for me, this is one of the happiest issues that we've been able to come together. It is so important, and it was so wonderful to be at the City Council meeting last night and to get a 5-0 vote. And it's so wonderful to have the county, and I so appreciate your participation and what you've done for this. I do think it's a step that hopefully we're going to see more of this happening. So as a member of the Board of Trustees, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Margie Richmond.
Good morning again. I'm glad we got to a point where I can support this. I did oppose it originally because I thought there were issues with the local streets that had not been addressed. I think the success of this going forward will have a lot to do with the willingness of the high school administration and the students to follow the rules concerning those streets. As I mentioned, or as the high school trustees and the superintendent mentioned, they are a school in the middle of town, and as the chairman of the board mentioned, they are a school in the middle of town. And I was surprised, some of the discussion last night, that there is not an existing community relations committee between the school and the local streets there. I think that's vitally important. I would hope that that the superintendent and the trustees would take that idea back and open a community relations committee, because as long as that school's there and all those residents are there, they're going to be working together, and they also will have conflicts that they need to work out. And I think the success of this, I think the guarantees that are in the memorandum are good, and they will get things done and expeditiously. And I believe that a lot of the future, how people see it 5 years from now, will have to do with community relations, whether or not people enforce the rules on parking, whether or not the people who live in your district are safe, as well as the students from all the traffic that's going to be diverted onto the other streets. In the long run, I think it's a good thing. I don't particularly use Nash Road hardly ever, so this is not a personal issue with me, but I think it's a good community issue. So I'm more than willing to support it. Everybody's got their little piece of pie, and I'm glad to see everybody's happy. But going forward, let's open up some relationships with the local community to make sure that they are in support and that they exchange information with the school administration about how's it going. Thank you for your time.
Adrian Ramirez.
All right, good evening. First of all, I apologize that I pulled off a consent item here, putting the wrong number. I won't hear the end of that when I get to back to campus. But anyhow, I want to echo the gratitude, County Board of Supervisors. I know you guys have been behind this and support of this from the beginning. We do appreciate the representation that we had yesterday at our City Council meeting. Having a 5-0 vote from the City Council was definitely a big deal. Aside from the students, you're probably looking at the person who reaps the most benefit from this agreement as the principal. School safety is obviously, is number one. I mean, we can come up with the best, most researched practices in terms of curriculum and instruction and all the things that are out there that effectively teach and engage students. But none of that happens if a student is not physically or emotionally or socially safe on a school campus. Safety trumps everything, not just physical safety, but the well-being of students from a mental health perspective. I've learned that firsthand in my experience. And so, this is a big deal for us. This will help us shift some resources in other areas. As we know, having a campus of 3,000 students, we're at 2896 as of today. So 3,000 students, right under 300 employees, and the countless staff members that use that crossing every day. This is obviously a big deal for us. And just want to reassure the Board of Supervisors, as I echoed to the City Council yesterday, we are not washing our hands clean of being good neighbors. In the time that I've been at the high school, I think I'm going on my 14th year, I know for a fact I've never seen such an effort behind the leadership of our Superintendent, John Perales, to be good neighbors. From the parking situation that we've significantly improved, there's still room for improvement. All the way from administrators ourselves walking through those streets and talking to those neighbors in their driveways, having coffee and things like that. And so at the end of our meeting yesterday, City Council meeting, we set up a meeting with several of those neighbors to sit down and discuss some potential ideas and some solutions to things that may still occur. So we're very committed to that. My own kids will go to the high school. I'm a member of this community. And I obviously used to live a couple blocks away. I grew up. And so we understand that there's an impact on those residents, and we're committed to continuing that effort with them. So thank you guys again.
I have no more speakers.
Okay. Are there any other speakers on this item? Now's the time to do so. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for decision.
I will make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve this resolution through staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
It's second.
Okay, motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Adam.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, there has been a request to take a photograph.
We'll take a 5-minute break.
Okay, thank you.
the resolution per staff recommendation. And so it sounded rather singletary. So what we're just asking is that the motion be amended to just say adopt the resolution and the interagency agreement per staff resolution.
Okay.
So I will make that change to my resolution to include.
Okay, there's a second of, who provided the second, Mr. Botelho?
Yes, I concur with
You mean we
that.
could deny it right now?
Yeah.
All those in favor of the amended motion?
We'll change the vote now that all the supporters left.
All those in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, so moving on to item 18. This is out of our county counsel's office. Mr. Granger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Thompson, the Assistant County Counsel, will present item 18, and this is regarding the continuance of the moratorium on the cultivation of marijuana within the boundaries of San Benito County.
Yes, the board is asked to open a public hearing and consider any comments. And before the board is an ordinance to extend the interim urgency ordinance that was adopted on September 27th. It had to be brought before the board today because it expires on November 11th. So there wasn't time to put it over to the next meeting after the results of the election on Prop 64. I did, depending on what happens with Prop 64, I can either work with the committee that we had previously, or I can bring it back to the board at a future board meeting to determine, and give an update on the status of 64 and get further direction from the board. There was a question I wanted to address to the board. There was some question about what the effect of 64 is on the ability of property taxes, taxes, and the ability of grants. So in Prop 64, the county would have the ability to tax the cultivation and dispensary activities. But if there are no such activities, then you wouldn't have the activity to be taxed in your county. And then additionally, in the ballot packet, it did indicate that if you don't have, the board shall not make any grants of the money that's received by the state pursuant to their funding, which have banned cultivation, including personal cultivation or the retail sale of marijuana or marijuana products. So there is a prohibition about receiving grant money if it's banned locally. So that was one question that was presented. So if the board is agreeable, then I would present this ordinance for adoption, and then the board can add such further direction as it may wish, such as to bring it back at a future meeting to have discussions about any changes to this ordinance in light of what happens with Prop 64. Are there any questions for me?
Any questions of staff at this time? No. Okay. At this time, I think we'll open up to public comment.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
First speaker is Stephanie Smith.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I wanted to, you've all seen me up here before and have kind of heard our story, and we really appreciate your support in moving this forward and passing the extension to this resolution. It's obviously only been a very short period of time, and it really needs to be extended so that it can have a full impact for next year and hopefully far beyond that. So, from my experience, it's been very difficult living next to a large grow operation, and my husband and I really appreciate your moving this forward so that we can live without the smell hopefully next year. So, thank you so much.
Ann Johnson.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I live in the county, and I really urge you to extend the ordinance. There's plenty of property around me to have the same issue as she was just talking about, of having a grow farm right next door and having to deal with that. So I know you've all spent a lot of time considering everything, and I really appreciate your time, and I hope that you are all encouraged to extend the ordinance for another 10 months. Thank you.
Jack Kirk.
Thank you, Board, and thank you for the support of the emergency ordinance in the past, and I encourage you again to
extend this for a full year, so you have time to work on your full ordinance. You know, as you guys now have worked on dispensing, you've worked on cultivating, and the last part that you need to address in a permanent ordinance is manufacturing. I've got some feedback from some in the community that have called me that perhaps their next area of attack is manufacture, like they did downtown Hollister, where they actually press the oils and make the candies and make the cookies and make those kinds of things. That needs to be addressed in your ordinance and in the future. So those are the three areas: the dispensing, the cultivation, and the manufacturing. And a number of us have been working with the mayor of Hollister, and there is some work to provide safe access for those with medical marijuana cards in the business park area, and keeping it away from the households and schools and churches and things. So we're working on I've been working on the ordinance there. So I do really encourage you to continue to extend this ordinance, and then to allow yourself some time to put a permanent ordinance together. Thank you very much.
Gary Cameron.
My name's Gary Cameron. I've lived in San Benito County now. I had to add it up. It was 46 years ago that we moved here. And I've already spoken regarding my feelings about this ordinance and encourage you to continue to pass this so that it goes for another 10 months. I appreciate the time and effort that all of you put into this. I know that it's been a controversial issue, but just wanted to say that I do support it and appreciate all the time that you put into it. Thank you.
Brazil.
Good morning, Chairman, Supervisors, staff. My name is Peter Brazil. I'm an attorney with L&G. I'm here representing numerous responsible cultivators and collectives. With my limited time up here, I'm going to focus on the specific issue of continued cultivation and the amortization period that you have under the current draft ordinance and the property rights that might be associated with the same. San Benito County is home to a substantial number of responsible and longtime medical cannabis collectives and cultivators. These collectives and cultivators, during their years here, have expended a substantial amount of time, labor, and capital. And these cultivators and collectives have done so with an honest intention of doing so over the long term. This intention is coupled with their substantial personal investments, give rise to a reasonable property rights and expectations. Now, I spoke before here about incorporating or drafting an ordinance that incorporated aspects of San Luis Obispo County and Monterey County's ordinances, which allowed prior existing operators an opportunity to operate during the entire period that you draft a permanent ordinance. You guys have drafted an ordinance here that has a little bit more conservative approach, so I want to spend some time talking about the amortization period or components of those. I urge the board and the county staff to reasonably apply the amortization requests of the responsible operators in your community and county that will be submitted over the coming weeks. Additionally, I want to emphasize the importance of moving forward diligently to craft a permanent medical cannabis ordinance as soon as reasonably possible. My desire and the desire of all the local medical collectives and cultivators is to be afforded the time and the opportunity to survive and preserve their operations. I'm not aware of many endeavors that can sustain long extended periods of non-operation. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Board. And I missed it at the beginning, but many counties are considering commercial grows for medical purposes. I see at this particular juncture that San Benito has forbidden commercial larger grows for any reason, including medical. Will the board be considering in the future any commercial licenses for grows for medical purposes, other than just the small, few plants
that are in their facility. That's a question I'd have. The second one would be, if Prop 64 passes, will the board possibly change its direction? In addition to that, will there be any flexibility in the immunity period, which I believe is due to expire on December 27th? And then in which there'll be the, I believe it's the amortization period where folks will have the opportunity to come before the board, plead their case. And if that happens, are there any circumstances in which the board might approve somebody? And if not, is there an appeal process? And if there is an appeal process and it's denied, what will happen to that particular grow? Would appreciate any comments that you guys could provide, and thank you very much.
Marty Richmond.
We'll take turns standing each other's cards in. We have to get self-walking cards that come up here and walk themselves into the clerk. Someone else's. Thank you. Marty Richmond from Hollister. I would encourage you to extend the ordinance, and you know where I stand on the recreational use, so we won't go over that again. Here's my argument. I've been on this earth too long to try and predict what's going to happen in the future. I don't know what it's going to look like 12 months from now. I don't know what our local voters would want 12 months from now. I have no idea. I don't even know what they're going to want tomorrow when you count the votes, until you count the votes. But this is about control. And what we've seen is, before people had ordinances, before they had a good handle on what was going on, before the taxes were all set up, as soon as someone made a pinhole that they could run 50 trucks through, everybody ran through it. That's the way I see it. They all said, well, if I get there first, I can get there with the mostest, whether it was for medical or for recreational, whatever. And so people ran through the hole, and maybe that's the fault of the government. I don't know how it works. I just know that this operation is of size right now where you still got to wrestle to get it under control and make sure you got it all sewed up. So whatever you decide to do, you can do because you control it. I'm concerned about it being out of control, and I think you shouldn't do anything until you get it under control. And if you say we have this many operations, or we think we can support this many, and we want to tax it this much and whatever, then you can control it. If you say just go set up because you were there first, and you can just keep operating, and no one's got you on the records books, and we don't know where you are, and we don't know how many plants you got, so we don't know how many taxes we have to collect, then we'll never get it under control. Because I point out what happened in Los Angeles. They lost control for 6 months. Next thing you know, they had 500 illegal dispensaries. That's how fast you can lose control. I can assure you this, even when it comes to medical marijuana, there will be no shortage of medical marijuana in the state of California. There will be plenty of suppliers, and yeah, maybe we want to have cultivation of that. I can't say, but I can say I don't think we know how many items we got, how many acres we got. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm willing to listen if somebody to tell me. I don't know. We know what the tax rate ought to be, because I don't know. We can say what we got and how much we would collect and what it would cost to enforce. You've got to get this under control before you shouldn't let it go wild before we get the rules in. That's what I say. I thank you, and I hope you consider my points. Thank you very much.
Steve Becerra.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Steve Becerra. I've been a San Benito County resident since very early 1980. I'm glad the attorney brought up the fact about the limited immunity and extended amortization period, because I think it's important that that you vet well those that actually submit their information asking for those limited liability and extended amortization periods for a current crop of medical marijuana. And I like to drag it back to medical marijuana. That's what your ordinance is talking about. It's medical marijuana. As of today, cultivating marijuana outside of medical is still illegal in California. It may change by the end of tonight. But I took a short drive yesterday. I didn't go farther than Four Corners, to the north. I didn't go farther than Fairview to the east, or to the east, and then to the 6,000 block of Southside Road to the south. And I took pictures of 5 marijuana operations, all well within 300 feet of the road. So I'm really glad, and I'm really hope that you take control take control of these operations and extend this your current ordinance to do so. It's important. 3 of these operations, by the way, appear to be extending their greenhouses, building new ones. So I would encourage whoever's going to be checking on what they say they're growing now, have been growing now in this last quarter is actually accurate. As Mr. Kirk mentioned, the city council has just issued a new draft ordinance that they're going to be reviewing for cultivation, manufacturing, and dispensaries, and working towards, as you know, safe local access for medical marijuana. And I would encourage you also to continue in your efforts to put something together for the county, not only in the area of cultivation, but manufacturing and dispensing of medical marijuana in the future. So I would encourage you again to extend this ordinance and work towards tightening things up and taking back control of these medical marijuana cultivation operations in our county. Thank you.
Brent Barnes, Resource Management Agency Director. I'm not here to speak about the ordinance itself, but about the administration side of it. Just for the board's information, we've had a handful, 4 or 5 requests for the waiver, and we have, I believe, at last count, 2 requests for the amortization period to start the process on that. I hosted a meeting with law enforcement, the services agencies, and counsel, and a variety of other folks a couple of weeks ago to try and figure out how to administer this thing. We put together a couple of flyers actually, that we're handing out at the counter and have posted in various places around the county. I didn't bring any today. You may have seen one. I think there's actually one on the bulletin board out front that very briefly describes the rules and gives a link to the website for more information. The main point I want to make for you this morning is that this is time and labor intensive, and will continue to be so as we process what I anticipate will be a fairly large number of amortization requests over the coming months. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
President Botelho?
Working on this ordinance, the idea was to ban marijuana cultivation, commercial cultivation. And with the amortization, dealing with operations that are legitimately for medical, commercial medical cultivation. Recreation cultivation, no matter what happens in California today, is still banned. I don't see that being qualified for amortization because we didn't have recreation cultivation up to this point,
right.
Depending on the election. But I'm not sure we're going to get a huge flood of applicants for the amortization program, because how many of those operations are legitimately commercial medical marijuana cultivation? That's, I think, is the difference, and a point that I want to be clear as far as answering what circumstances there are for approval. The board committee that put this ordinance together wanted to be fair. I think with the amortization process, and that is to try to deal with people that legitimately have an investment, a permitted through the state of California commercial medical marijuana operation, and then we go from there. And so, am I misinterpreting what our program is?
No, Supervisor, not at all. It's difficult on the hoof, so to speak, to tell a medical marijuana plant from a recreational marijuana plant. And so I would anticipate that there would be potentially recreational plants that want to become medical plants for the purposes of the ordinance. The difficulty that we have beyond that, I didn't see the photographs that were displayed, but I'd be willing to bet that most of those grows are in hoop houses. A hoop house is a structure that does not require a building permit, as most of you probably know here in the county. But at the same time, I'm getting a huge uptick in electrical service requests. A typical house runs 150, maybe 200 amps for a large house for electrical service. We have a number of hoop houses with proposed 600 to 1,000 amp service connections.
And,
for horticultural purposes, and we don't know if they're growing asparagus, broccoli, or cannabis, and there's no way for us to deny.
Can I ask a question of the director, Mr. Chairman, please? In regards to the hoop houses, my understanding and experience has always been that hoop houses that have electrical services are more permanent type of hoop houses that would be required to get a use permit. The ones that are just the plastic thrown over some aluminum frame is temporary, obviously
Seasonal,
temporary.
sure.
But if you're bringing that type of amperage, and you would have to classify it as permanent, whereas the person building it would have to come in for a use permit.
So it's a fine line, and usually the hoop house goes up first, and then they come for the electrical service, which is a administrative permit. It's not a discretionary permit. If it meets the code requirement, we're required to issue it. However, we recognize that that's an issue, and that more than a 200 amp service is likely to be a commercial operation of some kind. Typically not a farming operation or something ancillary to a residence. So we're reviewing those as if they were commercial operations, and the only hook we have there is the zoning. So that's where we go with that, but it becomes a sort of a convoluted conversation and a gray area.
Okay. Well, we'll have to work on the gray area, so obviously.
We may need some direction or an ordinance from the board, and we'll be pursuing that.
Yeah, because I think if you're pulling that type of power, it's not a temporary hoop house. It's not like my neighbor growing raspberries where they're pulling off the plastic and working ground. It's another neighbor that's breeding plants,
exotic orchids or something,
and they had to come in for use permits because of the drainage issues and all the other issues that go along with that. We worked hard to try to take a conservative approach. I agree with the L&G lawyer that people have some inherited property rights, but that goes along with the next door neighbor. And this is a conservative approach, and I'm hoping that through our amortization effort process that we're just recognizing medical marijuana at this point and developing an ordinance that will take responsible cultivation practices in appropriate areas and move in that direction in the future. Instead of having somebody, just drop in an operation in a semi-urban setting. It's not appropriate, I think the impacts are too great, and we have a lot of work to do, and I hope the board supports this extension, and we continue to work on a good ordinance that fits this community, regardless what happens with 64, because we have to have it regardless what the vote is today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a comment, Mr. Chair, and I want to just encourage the board to support any ordinance that you feel, Brent, needs to be brought and passed to make your end and staff, because we have limited staff, and you said it is labor intensive.
Yes, ma'am.
And we need to help you. We need to support you. So if you have any ideas, please bring them forward. And if there's anything that we can do, I encourage
Appreciate
us
that.
to
Thank you
move-
very much.
to do that.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz.
Thank you. If the board does approve this today, and in next year the board comes up with some plans, say by June or July, those new regulations can be implemented, and then this moratorium will be set aside. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. There's just some requirements, like a 30 days, something like that, correct?
I'm sorry, I missed
There's
that
like a
last.
30 days where you have to provide notice that it's going to happen.
Of the new ordinance?
Yes.
There will be a whole hearing process. Yes, it will be publicly vetted. Absolutely.
All right. Good.
I anticipate there would be a lot of discussion, both with the Planning Commission and the board, even before we get to a formal public hearing process.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other questions,
Thank you very
comments
much.
from members of the board? Nope. Any other comments from members of the public? Certainly.
So just so I understand, to clarify, during the amortization period, there may be allowances for commercial medical, provided they comply with all the state regulations and all of the regulations that you guys might put forth in an ordinance?
I'm just one supervisor. I would consider it if it's a legal operation.
Well, if I could direct all the questions to our office, Barbara Thompson at the County Counsel's office, I can answer some of the questions about that process.
Okay,
You
because
would have to come to the board for a hearing.
You just mentioned that if it was following the state regulations, that you might consider. That's what I thought I heard.
I'm just one vote.
Yeah. It has to come for a hearing in front of the board, a notice public meeting, but I'll give you my phone number.
Mr. Chair,
you,
I'd
Barbara.
like to know who this gentleman is, and you may have introduced yourself earlier. Could you come to the podium and tell us who you represent? And
Just represent myself. Out of the Bay Area, I'd had some people had asked about the county, and so I was just down here seeking information. That's it. I don't grow. I'm not a grower. I'm not in that business.
are you a real estate agent?
No.
No? Okay, I'm just curious. Thank you, Mr.
You're
Chair.
welcome.
You an investor? Nope. Just down here out of curiosity?
So, just to clarify, if I could, just to make sure that the confusion level is reduced as much as possible, there is the cultivation of medical marijuana, which, as we know, has some protection here in California. But even the medical marijuana is not to be grown commercially. When you say the word commercial, you imply retail or for profit or something like that. So I think it's a bit of a misnomer to say commercial marijuana growth. It kind of lumps the two concepts together and causes perhaps a little bit of confusion. So you're under our current ordinance, you're allowed to grow medical marijuana within the confines of the state law, limited to 6 plants? 6 plants, I think. Okay, that's it. There is no commercial application of marijuana at all, even in the medical marijuana setting. Again, commercial implying that it's for profit or retail or you're going to make money off it, okay? So people in the audience should understand that there is a 100% ban on the cultivation of marijuana in the county of San Benito that is commercial in nature.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Well, I understood what you're saying. I just don't want to confuse anybody. So.
And what I was kind of referring to was I guess cooperatives.
Co-op. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, collectives. So scratch the word commercial. Collectives, legal collectives.
But, Mr. Chair, a quick question. Barbara, because what we have in place right now is 6 plants per legal parcel, the amortization only applies to who?
It applies to larger cultivation sites, if they can come forth and make the showing that they need to have an amortization period so it doesn't constitute an unlawful taking of property. So it would be a case-by-case basis. They could say how long they've been in business and what their return on their investment has been and why they should be granted an
And then
extension.
this body can make a determination of how long, how short the
Right.
amortization could be.
Right. And I think that if we have multiple applications, we probably should hear them and set a special, a hearing for the board to consider them all. And
So if I were to do an operation tomorrow, would I qualify under the amortization?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Pre-existing.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara.
Mhm.
Appreciate it. At this time, if there are any additional questions,
Let me read.
comments or questions from the board, if not, we'll entertain a motion.
Okay, let me read the title of the ordinance for the record. It's an ordinance of the Board of Supervisors of the County of San Benito extending Ordinance 949, which adopted a marijuana cultivation ordinance by adding Chapter 11.15 to Title 11 of the San Benito County Code, and I'll throw it back to the boards for its motion.
Is there a motion to approve the extension of this ordinance?
I will
Per
make a
staff
motion.
recommendation.
I will make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
It's second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 19. This is out of the Resource Management Agency, Mr. Barnes. Last item of the day.
I will try to be brief. Mr. Chairman, good morning again, supervisors. This is an amendment to the general plan. It involves one particular area of the county, the northern part of the county, the Bolsa, where there's the TriCal operation that manufactures fertilizers and other hazardous materials. And at the time the general plan was adopted, there was a buffer zone established around that facility. There's been conversations more recently with nearby property owners suggesting that the buffer zone was inappropriately applied. And so this is an amendment to the health and safety element of the general plan that would remove the 2.5-mile hard barrier, the bright line buffer around that facility, and replace it with a case-by-case assessment, a more scientific assessment of potential hazard based on the types of materials that are there, the types of land uses that are proposed around from the adjacent properties, and so on. Just as an example, on a nearby property, we've received an application for several acres of a solar farm. Well, clearly that would not be a use that would be impacted by hazardous materials particularly. So that would be something that we would allow within this buffer area just as of right. So this is a public hearing. We're requesting that you hold a public hearing on the general plan amendment. We're also asking that following the public hearing and in consideration of facts on the record and testimony that you received, that you find the EIR 201111016 adequately describes the potential environmental impacts of the policy change, and adopt a resolution making the CEQA findings and adopting the amendment to the general plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions of staff?
Oh, there is one change in your resolution.
Yeah.
Barbara will talk about that.
I passed out changes to the resolution, which is redlined. It just indicated that under the new, it basically indicated that the buffer could be, due to site-related conditions, the buffer could be greater or lesser than the 2.5 miles now because of the consideration of a variety of factors. So it's just a little bit more descriptive of the actual changes that are made due to the general plan amendment, in that the buffer could be increased or decreased from 2.5 miles. So there is that amended resolution. And also just to note that the exhibits were included in the agenda item. They were just slightly out of order in the attachments. So they're the same exhibits that were there to the Planning Commission resolution that will be attached to this resolution.
Great. Thank you, Barbara. This time I'll open up for public comment. No comments from the public. I'll bring it back to the board for a decision.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2016- as amended.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. At this time, we will adjourn, and our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 22nd. Oh, we do? We have one more closed session? Yeah. Oh, we have the CAO? The performance review? All right. I suppose we'll go back into closed session. So at this time, we'll adjourn back into closed session.